Hello, and welcome into another Humankind review video on the Maddish Moose YouTube channel. Very excited. Today, I want to walk through all of the pre-announced changes coming for the Bolivar update to Humankind, which is slated to come out mid-June. Very excited for these changes. They have announced all of the things that they said that they're going to announce before the change happens, so I'm sure that there are other things that will come out as the patch is released. Little quality of life things, little bug fixes and stuff like that that will come out with the Bolivar update. But a tip of the cap and a special hats off to Amplitude and to the Humankind devs, because what they have put together here is really special. It's involving the community, and the best part about it is they've published specific things. So the Cat of Nine Tails comes out and publishes these excellent dev blog updates that showcase exactly what we can look forward to in pretty good detail. And so what I want to do today is let's walk through each of the 3 different blog posts that Amplitude has put out, and then I'll go in-game and I'll show you what those changes might start to look like and how it's going to impact our Humankind gameplay. Thanks for tuning in, and I hope that you enjoy the content. Okay, let's start with the very first dev blog that came out. 16 days ago, the Bolivar update was essentially announced as a result of this specific blog post. War support and surrender. Now, this is a relatively touchy topic, but a very important one. I know in my community, as we've talked about changes that needed to happen with war and war support and surrender, I know that there's been a lot of ideas pitched. This seems to be a very nice compromise between all of the different ideas that I have been hearing about this topic. I have people in my community that want like just full-blown ability to go to war and no penalties and just continue wars until you crush people, which is met with staunch resistance from those people in the community who really, really love that Humankind went a different route and made it so that wars have an endpoint based on the score system, the war support system. So here is the war support and surrender update for the Bolivar update. So first we start with voluntary forced surrender. So you no longer will have to force your opponent to surrender when you drop their war score to 0. You will be able to continue your war. However, that will be at a pretty punitive punishment. You will have to have a stability decrease in your cities the longer you drag the war out. Now, they haven't described exactly what that's going to look like, but I picture it as something that's kind of exponential. Maybe for the first couple turns you push a war past, it's a moderate stability penalty, but as you continue to be at war past that turn where you could have asked for surrender, your people will get more and more unstable, and that stability will start to dwindle even further in your cities, which could cause major problems. One of the thoughts that my community had put forward is, well, what if it's a fame penalty if you drag a war out? I still really like the idea of a fame penalty or some way that you can lose fame in Humankind. I'm not sure that that will ever get implemented, but I think it could be a nice catch-up mechanic to some of the snowball stuff that goes on, so we'll see if that ever catches. But I really like the compromise here of, yes, you can keep your war going, but it is going to cost you stability in your cities. So, pretty big. No more forced surrender. That's important. We also have some changes coming to war support. So we also get war support after a battle is based on losses. So you could win a battle, but if you lose a bunch of people or more people than them, you may actually lose war support for that. Makes a lot of sense. I really like this. Ransacking enemy districts will now cost the enemy war support. This didn't happen before, and so there really wasn't much incentive to that ransack as far as war support was concerned. Also, you could ransack without penalty. If you were one of those people who didn't want the war to end, you could just go ransacking and know that that would never impact your war support. And so now it does cost the enemy war support, and so that will shorten wars if you're out ransacking. And territories under control, but under enemy's cultural influence, will drain war support each turn. I really like the dynamic here, right? If you own a territory because of a war, but they're under your enemy's cultural influence, that's going to cost you war support, which makes, again, a lot of sense. So these changes feel very natural. They feel very normal. So that's the big first one. So let's jump in game really quick and see what exactly that might look like. So I've pulled up an old save, and you'll notice we're doing quite well in this game. We're on turn 115. We've kind of established ourselves on our continent. We've spread to a couple of other continents. We just ended a war, actually, over here with the Greeks. And so I think what I'll do is I'll declare war on the English here, because I think I have a lot of war support against the English. I don't necessarily have any armies over here, but that's not really what we want to show, right? What we want to show is what war support looks like right now, right? We have decent war support. They have decent war support. Nothing too different here. If we declare a surprise war, that's obviously going to cost us some war support. And again, I would never do this in a normal game, but for the purposes of showing what this is going to look like, we'll declare a surprise war. And so lightly, then you can see, necessary. Go through these. I still haven't adjusted my settings in this game.
You were low in my estimation, but now I find you lower still.
We have our war, now our war support bar is up, right? So we've got our war support coming in here. Now, when the war resolution would happen, right, we have certain war scores that we're getting for different things. And when their war support or our war support would reach 0, the war would end. Whoever dropped their opponent's war score to 0 would be forced to offer surrender to their opponent. So that's no longer going to be the case with the Bolivar update. You will be able to get their war support to 0, and then continue the war at the cost of stability. That's also going to impact, obviously, war score, right? So if your war score was quite low, and the war was going to end, you might be able to prolong a war in order to up your war score a little bit more so that you can get more of the things, right? So when your war ends, you use your score to determine how many territories you can take, how much gold you can request, whether they become a vassal or not, all of those things. And so if you didn't quite have enough, being able to extend that for a few turns might become a very important thing. So again, this is, I think, a really much needed change. I think it's a really great compromise. I think it balances between what people really loved about Humankind, in that war was not the end all, and you could get out of war with that kind of war support lowering and different things like that. And it wasn't like once someone declared war on you, it was either you survive or they survive, and it was an all or nothing, because it's like that in a lot of other games. And so it was much more like, hey, we can have a war over a piece of land. I take the land and then it's over. But then there were other people who wanted to push that war maybe a little further, and so now they can. They just have to be willing to take that stability penalty, right? So, but probably in my mind, best of both worlds here. I really, really like this change. Okay, let's jump over to 9 days ago, another dev blog post from the Cat of Nine Tails, Quality of Life Improvements Part 1 for the Bolivar update. So I am so excited about some of these changes. The first one here, urban planning made easy. This is very exciting to me. I think that currently, for the most part, and when I play the game, I do this a lot, infrastructures are almost always better than districts in most instances. And again, you can watch my build order video if you want to check out some of my tips on those things. But I think infrastructures are hugely important. The problem is you've had to run your own calculations for your infrastructures. When you click on a district, it shows you the yields that you're going to get, and you know kind of what's coming to you. When you click and build an infrastructure, there has been no tooltip, there has been nothing to state what you're going to get. So urban planning made easy. You are now going to be able to see the yields that a new infrastructure will give you in a city. This is huge. I love it. You can actually see in their example down here, it says gains in this city plus 15% industry. Before, you'd have to go and find all of the woods tiles, all the forests, all the woodlands, and actually add those up that you were currently extracting from. Like, no one was doing that, right? And so you'd make like an educated guess and say like, oh yeah, it looks like I'm like on a bunch of woods. Like, I think this would be worthwhile. Now, no more educated guess. You can actually see the FIMS yield that you're going to get from an infrastructure. Very exciting. Another huge quality of life change. Unstable beyond measure. Big one. Okay. Stability in the game plays a critical role. but stability seems to fluctuate quite a bit. And with the announcement of in the Bolivar update, the changes to stability as a result of continuing wars, this becomes even more important. Now, if your city was at 100% stability, you were just like, cool, my city's at 100% stability. However, that could drop very quickly. If you were actually at 100%, that could drop very quickly down to a level where you don't want it. Whereas if you were at like 120 or 130%, it would take a while to get to a level where you really cared whether it was dropping or not. But you didn't know unless you came in and literally added up all these, subtracted out all of these, and did the math yourself. There was no tooltip that showed what your actual stability was. So now you can see 18% surplus, 100 stability, so it's still going to read as 100%, but now you know you have an 18% surplus. So now you know if you did nothing else, if your stability did not change and you built 2 districts in this particular city, you'd get down to 98%. And then you'd be like, okay, well, great, then I'm still at 98, so I can build 2 districts without having to worry about my stability at that point. Right, but if you were at 100%, you'd see the same number, but if you built 2 districts, then all of a sudden you'd be down at 80%, and you're like, oh, that's not where I want to do. Like, I don't want to be down at 80%, right? So now you can much better plan to manage your stability in your cities with the unstable beyond measure update here. Clean pollution. This one is one that I have not had a lot of experience with because I don't usually heavy focus industry. I have in my last game, the most recent game I played, which we'll actually review next week on the YouTube channel. I have had some pollution penalty problems, which I thought, once I saw that, I was like, oh my gosh, those are heavy penalties if you're not paying attention to your pollution. I've just never played that heavy on the industry side. But clean pollution, basically, this is very simple. You can either turn on or off pollution. You could turn on or off the penalties for pollution, right? So if you don't want to have to deal with those penalties, build your cities however you want to, but still have that pollution option there. You can now disable the penalties for it. Again, I think this is a nice quality of life thing. Anytime you give players more options, that's always nice. And that's the same with this next one, a modern coat of paint. This is a nice visual effect that you can have. You can renovate your administrative centers or not renovate your administrative centers based on your choosing to get the look of the empire that you want. Again, the more you give players choice, the better the game is going to be. So I like that. And then I haven't played with many mods, but it looks like we're getting some mod improvement, and I'm excited to at some point get into mods. I really want Amplitude to get Humankind to a place where I feel like they like it before I start putting mods in on the game. I really like to go with what the developer is looking for in a game before I start to add mods. But for any people who are modding the game already, and for modders themselves, obviously this particular update is pretty nice. So just to re-emphasize what we're looking at, when we're in a city currently, right? So here's my exclamation mark Knox city in this particular game. If we were to build a district, so I have access to the Three Sisters plantations, if we were to build this, it conveniently comes up with a tooltip that says you will get plus 30 food if you build it here, and you will get minus 10 stability. Those are the yields if you build this district. That's always been in game. That's just how it is. Now, if I go to an infrastructure, and I go like, oh, well, I would love to do fishery. Now, fishery is relatively easy to calculate because you could just go find all of your harbors and add plus 3 food for it, and you would know. Now, once the Bolivar update is complete, like we saw in the screenshot that the Cat of Nine Tails showed, it will show at the very bottom of this particular screen that says fishery. So right underneath the construction time, it will say what the yield will be for each of your infrastructures. Again, the infrastructure thing is a huge deal. That's huge. And then right here, we'll see I am about to enter some major stability problems, mainly because probably I just declared that war, if you recall. That probably cut a bunch of my luxury resource trade routes, and so my output is now dropped from 95 to 53, pretty substantial. That's why war is very painful in Humankind if you're trading with the opponent you're about to go to war with, which is why I would have never declared that war in the first place. But for example's sake, of course, we did it. So now we can see we're at 95%, and we're going down to 53. If we could find it, I don't think any of my cities now will be at 100%. Ah, this one still is. So this one is at 100%, but we have no idea Whether it's at 100%, 110, 15, 112, 150, it could be any different way. The only way to figure that out would be to go down to each of these pluses and minuses and actually add those all up and subtract them all out, which no one's going to do. And so they are coming out with that lovely tooltip that says plus whatever excess if you are over 100%, which is, in my opinion, really, really nice. So that's going to be, again, I think, a game changer as well for just convenience and quality there. So, all right, let's go back to the last dev post. 2 days ago, the final quality of life improvements came out, and this one is kind of a doozy. There's a lot of stuff here, right? So, we'll start with Law of the Land. I think, again, big update here. Law of the Land. For your civics. There are civics that after hundreds of hours in this game, I have never seen. I'm sure a lot of you have never seen some of the civics at the end of the trees. One of the reasons for that is I, as well as most people, have no idea without going outside the game to go look up when someone else has already found this out. There's no indicator as to how you get that civic. Now, I like that there are triggers for these civics. I like that you do have to certain in-game actions trigger these, and that makes a lot of sense, and I like it that way. However, not knowing what you had to do to unlock the next civic didn't give you anything to work for. It didn't give you goals from a civics tree standpoint. You just kind of hoped, right, that you would run into these different things. So now, with Laws of the Land, as you can see in this particular screenshot, action to unlock this civic, and it will describe to you exactly what needs to happen in order for you to unlock that civic. I think that this is a really good, again, quality of life change. Very much like the doing the math for you on the infrastructures, doing the math for you on the stability. Those things are really big. And so I really like what they're doing here in showing you what the civic, what you need to do in order to trigger the next civic. Here's a big one for some people, and I really like this change. I have some members of my community where this is the change that they are absolutely the most excited about. It's a Wonderful World. They are taking each natural wonder and giving them unique bonuses. So no longer will you find a natural wonder and just go, cool, natural wonder, I know exactly what that's getting me. I'll go claim it because it's still pretty good. Now you'll be able to go out and find natural wonders that have unique bonuses to them, and they'll actually be potentially worth fighting over. They'll be potentially worth hunting for and trying to find those spots. So I like this change. It's very common in Civ 6, some other 4X games, to have this unique feel to each of the natural wonders. So this is exciting for a lot of people. I think it's going to, again, quality of life improvement here that will make the natural wonders a little bit more exciting for everybody. This one I am also very excited about. The Lap of Luxury. I literally just started a game yesterday where I had luxury and strategic resources set to abundant, and I started on a continent by myself, and I had zero, absolutely none. I had zero luxury resources. So I really like that they're giving the players the option. With the Lap of Luxury, you have the option to select from the clustered, which is kind of how they do it, which, again, I like that to a degree, but for the sake of balancing starts in the game, it will be much more easy to spread them out as well. So there's going to be different distributions. You can do spread distribution, natural distribution, or clustered placement. So they usually use clustered is basically what they're saying. And so it looks like, and I don't quite know what natural will look like. We don't know that quite yet, but spread is going to be very exciting because it will allow for a more balanced start in the game as far as the luxuries are concerned. And luxury resources are incredibly important in the game of Humankind. So a very important change, I think, to balance the game. Of any of the changes that they're making, that change, this change, the Lap of Luxury change, I think is the one that will most affect balance in the game because you'll be able to create a more balanced map, and that should result in a much more balanced game overall. Lots of people very excited about this AI through the ages change. On higher level difficulties, specifically, but across the game, the AI played very well and very smartly at the beginning. And then they kind of didn't keep up throughout the rest of the game. And so what they're attempting to do is giving the AI different bonuses as the eras progress to help them kind of keep pace with the difficulty level that they're trying to have. This is a very welcome change. This is a difficult thing to get right. If you're talking about other 4X games, and I've played a lot of Civ 6 in particular, the whole thing with the AI is essentially they front stack everything, right? You get more at the beginning, and then it's basically just a catch-up game, and then once you've caught up, you're basically caught up at that point, right? This will allow Humankind to have a slightly different feel to it, where you're not just behind and you're playing a catch-up game, and once you've catch up, you kind of win against the AI. Now you'll have a little bit more of a longevity feel to that difficulty so that it has a better balanced feel across the game. I'm excited to see what that looks like. It's going to be interesting to see what that does across the different eras as you're playing on those higher difficulties. So that one will be interesting to test out. And then the final change that has been formally announced for the Bolivar update, arriving at New Shores. Look, anytime you could add more players to the game base, yes, do it. So adding Italian and Turkish language support, obviously, super smart idea. Bring more players in. It's always great to diversify your player base and allow more people to see a super cool game. So let's jump in and take a quick look at a couple of these pieces here. I want to specifically take a look at distribution of resources, as well as show you the civics tree. So here's the civics tree currently, right? We have our civics tree. And if, I don't think I've ever seen this civic. This one that's up here, I have no idea what it's called, and I have no idea how to get there. When the Bolivar update comes out, right under the text that you see up at the top of the screen there, you will see how you will get that civic. And so you'll have a set of circumstances that will need to occur in a city or in your empire, and then you'll be able to set a goal and actually try to go out and do those things so that you can unlock that civic and see what it could do for your empire. I'm very excited about this change because there are probably a solid 10 of these civics that I have probably never seen, simply because I've never happened to trigger the effect to unlock them. And so I'm very excited to be able to check out some of those and do the things that need to happen, set goals for myself in the game. The other thing that I think is brilliant about this is the goal setting part. It motivates you to have something to do in the game. You're not just focused on FIMS or a war or fame. Now you're like, oh, I really want to get to that civic. Here's a small subset of goals that you need to accomplish in order to make that happen. So it gives you kind of small goals, small tasks to do throughout the game to go and unlock some things you might want to see. So I'm excited about the change to civics. And then let's zoom out right to about here. So here's what I want to show you about the Lap of Luxury update, okay? Where we can spread luxury resources. Here's my land. Now, you will notice that there are a lot of luxury resources in my land. A lot of luxury resources in my land. The land itself happened to be kind of crummy, but if you go over here, and I was playing with my good friend Icarus in this particular game, as well as Nox, but if you go over to Icarus's land, which is conveniently and beautifully named after different Lord of the Rings things, you will notice there is 1, 2, 3. He has a continent that is approximately the same size as mine. He has 3 luxury resources. I can't even count them because there's way too many. I have 1, 2, 3 in one, no, 4. I have 4 in one territory, right? So that's where I think, again, when in a multiplayer game, this is hugely important, right? When he starts with no luxuries and I start with all the luxuries, I'm getting all those bonuses well before him, and I end up taking off quite a bit earlier, plus people have to trade with me, so I now have control over those resources. So if I ever want to cut people off from all of my resources, I can just stop trading with them. It just gives you a little bit too much power in the game, I think, particularly from a multiplayer standpoint. And then if you look over at Nox's land here, you can see she also started with all of one resource. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 salts. And that's across 2 territories almost. So that's the clustered effect, right? And so I think that, again, that's fine, but you could, in Icarus's land, he has 3 resources. Nox has 7 of 1, right? So you can see that from a distribution standpoint, a little bit more option to spread those out is just gonna create a more balanced game. And you'll notice Nox has conveniently named all of her cities after Star Wars planets, which is pretty cool. Oh, and her religion. The Sacred Text! So, that is the Bolivar update. Thank you for chatting with me. Thank you for hanging out in this video. Please feel free, if you would like, to hit the thumbs up button and make sure you subscribe to the channel so that you can see future videos that I put out. Next week will be another Humankind video. I'll be reviewing the Cultures of Africa DLC. I finally finished my game where we played in every era. We played all of the Cultures of Africa cultures that came out with the DLC pack. And so I'll talk to you a little bit about how that went and my thoughts on those Cultures of Africa DLC cultures, and as well as a couple of the wonders and other things that came out with it. So thank you all for tuning into the video. I will see you next week. Adios.